Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome to another episode of This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and today we are going to be wrapping up the series Babylon. But before I begin to listen to the series called Babylon on This and That, go to talkingaboutthисandthat.wordpress.com and click on the podcast link. The works by Bob Neumann will be featured in our blog, which has read more links. Click on them that take you to the articles. Each article has a podcast, which opens in a separate link so you can listen while you look. This is going to be a rather interesting last episode. I don't believe there are any more left. Right. From discernment to discipline to desolation. Now, this is the first part of this is written by the moderator of the forum Bob used to write to. The second is written by Bob as a response to the first. So, the moderator's letter is, I awoke around 4 a.m. this morning with the thought of desolation on my mind. Computers are a wonderful thing, especially when they are equipped with a Bible. I searched my quote-unquote online Bible for the term desolation or desolate or D-E-S-O-L-A-T asterisk, yielding 187 uses of that term and its derivatives. I was quite surprised there were that many. Due to the prodding of someone named Ron on a private email side, I have been pondering Daniel's abomination of desolation. And there you go, folks. That's why desolation is on the mind. Let me tell you something. As I am doing this, I have had to stop an audio of a show host doing a podcast, just like what I do. Thing is, he's got his audio video and you see him. And he has two other gentlemen on his podcast. One of them is retired military, a high muckety-muck military colonel. The other one is an ex-spy boy, CIA spy boy. Apparently, both of these two gentlemen still have connections to their past. You know, folks that have been working for 7-Eleven might have thought of 7-Eleven as part of their family, an extension in their social life. And so when they retire from 7-Eleven, sometimes they have chitty-chat with employees that were their friends that are still working for 7-Eleven, and sometimes the dish and the dirt of what's going on in the shop now comes out. Anybody who's ever been in the military knows the happy band of brethren in the mud and the blood. So, yes, these two gentlemen would probably still have friends in connected places that know stuff. Apparently one of them does his own podcast. He says he's a slave to the thing. I can relate. If anybody's ever done podcasting, do you know what it takes to do the editing? Oy vey. So, Daniel's abomination of desolation, according to these men, is starting to kind of the book of Daniel leading towards a Maccabees leading towards the opening salvos of the book of Revelation may actually be playing out in the Middle East. And the funny thing is, I have been saying on my little podunk broadcast, we're in World War III. Russia and its little war, and Israel and Hamas and its little war, which has bled over to Iran, is, they're connected because Russia and Iran are bedfellows. But I thought it was just wartime bedfellows. Looks like that's not the only thing they're in bed with. Something called BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. It's now called NDB. BRICS was a number of countries, and it's money. NDB is just called New Development Bank. And it looks as though Iran is becoming a player in this. Also, the concept of the Silk Road comes to mind because you remember that Kim Jong-un had the little railroad and was helping to supply Russia with people, or maybe it was China, and Mr. P was supplying Russia with troops. Now I'm not exactly sure who those troops were from, but they were from up the railroad. Looks like there's a bigger railroad. Looks like the business with Ukraine isn't over just a simple land grab, but a railroad system that they wanted to put through it. Why do they want a certain island, the Crimea, because that can be a waterway depot. It's kind of in the same area as Africa and Iran, which is in the African continent. Yeah, no, go Google the map of the world and look for Iran. Find out where it is. It's not in the Middle Eastern conflict. It's on the African continent. Say what? Yes. So it looks like China and Iran and Russia and the East, the men of the East, and we're batting at Revelations 18, carrying on towards 19, 17, 18, 19, and the men of the East, and the massive, we're going to fight the power of King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We'll be ready when he comes, type dealio, following the man, the great abominator, who makes to desolations, called Antichrist. But you need to have a coalition. And for all these centuries, we thought we had our allied axis, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. NATO's bigger than I thought. Our Ukrainian buddy, when he came to the dog show in the White House and got barked at by what we think of as bigger, badder dogs ourselves, had dropped this line of, if you let Russia take us over, you're going to live to regret it. But you have an ocean between you and Russia. And I said, well, yeah, but no, we don't, because we have the Antarctic. We have Alaska. And Russia can go up into the Antarctic. Apparently, there are a lot of people who want to nip Russia in the bud in the Antarctic. Why? So they can't get over into Alaska. Why? Because that's our northern flank. Do you honestly think that Canada is going to help us out now? No, Canada just wants a piece of our pie. They're drooling. They're baited. They're waiting. They're waiting for us to go bye-bye as a superpower. But there are the powers that be that want us to stay in place to balance Russia. And now we know why. Follow the money, folks. The money. The money is shifting from west to east. So is the power base. He who has the money, he who has mammona, has the power. Why? Because Jesus, the Christ of God, is quietly watching the orchestration. And he's pushing the buttons in people's hearts, hardening them so that they will go in their greed and their hardness of heart exactly where he wants them to go in order to, well, get someplace rather special. So, back to this broadcast here, because this is not where that goes. I had to throw this in because it ties in, and we'll discuss it possibly towards the end of this broadcast. So now, the moderator continues. God has desolated his people many times in the past. Jesus warned us that when you see the abomination of desolation, then flee. The abomination, will be a sign. In the past, the abominations have been something done in the temple, as in the slaughtering of a pig on the altar, or something done in the city of Jerusalem, as in the hanging of Roman ensigns over the gates of the city. Roman ensigns were worshipped as gods. The city was considered a quote-unquote holy place. In terms of post-New Testament abominations, when we saw the Pope declare himself infallible around the year 600, ooh, that's interesting, he mentions this. And when we saw teachings that exalted Mary to co-redemptrix status with Jesus, then we knew that a desolation was at hand. Interesting, full stop. What are we doing right now? The Protestants are now running the United States of America. It's just that they have secularized themselves just enough so that we don't see that they're actually church. Don't be fooled, listener. They are the new church. You know, apparently the Army had gone to Biden and said, "Yo, Prez, we'd like to do a parade." And Biden said, "Sure. Okay, $45 million for you guys. Go do your parade." Thinking to himself, well, I won't be here. What do I care? That's usually the idea of a hireling. But then again, most presidents are that anyway. So I mean, we've been a hireling state for decades, maybe a century or more. So, like this great military parade, you have church in leadership parading as, well, tares on parade. Because remember, the wheat, the tares, and the farmer had sown his seed, the gospel. But then the farmer and the help went to bed. And while they were asleep, instead of watching the field, the enemy came in and threw in tares. Problem is, the farmer said, let them grow. We might root out wheat while we're trying to get rid of tares. So now we are tares on parade in this nation. We're not to be trusted. In fact, on the thing I was listening to before I began broadcast, the comment was made that Iran really shouldn't be coming to the negotiation table with POTUS because POTUS can't be trusted. That's right. We have a criminal in the Oval Office behind the resolute desk who is being propped up by the tares that he has flanked himself, hemmed himself, surrounded himself with, a la Project 2025, to do the dirty work of Christian nationalism. Because, haven't you heard, we're going to bring Jesus' kingdom to this earth, and we're going to build it with our own two hands. We are the holy people. No tares on parade. Just like our $45 million Army Celebration Day parade for, well, just so happens POTUS's birthday was the same day. Oh, nice. Ooh, spicy. So, we're running the nation, this new church, that's going to bring the kingdom, build it here. And then Jesus will come in direct opposition to the last book of the Bible. You know, the revelation of Jesus, like as in the process that takes place before he shows up. Book. Right, that book. Because nobody really wants to consider it. Too messy, too dark and scary. We want our TV dinner in front of our TV and be entertained and go home to heaven and be entertained by our God because, well, we are God. I mean, you know, when Jesus comes, it's going to be our transformation. We will finally evolve and become gods. Haven't you heard? That's the blend of something Far Eastern, call it Hinduistic, call it Buddha, call it whatever you want to call it. Transcendental? Anybody? Oh, like the guys that founded this nation? Deists, transcendentalists. And they were enlightened men from the Enlightenment period, the Victorians, and a bunch of barroom rebels that got enough traction for colonies to become their own nation. So we are now an experiment. I think the Petri dish is being overrun by something that got into the Petri dish, and it's eating up the good bacteria, and it's making the Petri dish start to smell rancid, sadness. It's black, and it's nasty. Oh, wait, sin. Well, lawlessness, ellipsis. This is our new abomination, folks, but I'm the only one that seems to be out there right now saying it. Of course, I don't know. I'm a caregiver. I'm very much alone with my mother who doesn't talk back much anymore. So I have no idea who else might be talking about this. And since I don't put links, because let me be real with you for a moment. I am protecting my mother's life as she is in hospice. I would gladly post links, put a phone number, etc. But if anything happens to me, no one will be there for her. So I don't put links. I don't make myself available because I'm protecting someone. We are not in a safe environment. And every one of these things that I do carries with it a risk that the wrong people will listen to me and go, ooh, we don't want that keep going. We want that destroyed. We want to shut that down. Go find it. Go kill it. You know, because dead men tell no tales. Right. So, the moderator continues. This was an abomination of doctrine in the temple of God, or where it ought not to be. A desolation must and did follow. Only a few years after that, Muhammad began his rise, building mosques on the foundations of dead and ruined churches. Full stop again. Yes, one crusade after another crusade, and the Saladins and the Mohammedans, or the Muslims, built their mosques, took over places, but they didn't exactly people it. They just erected holy sites. We lost some of our holy sites, and then when we finally got Jerusalem back, we were able to reclaim some of our holy sites. And who even knows the actual foundations of those holy sites? So, yes, the moderator continues. Now, for the past 50 years, another abomination has risen in part of the church that was still alive, but that is now dead. That abomination is the covetousness-laden prosperity false gospel. Prophets have sent to warn of it. Discipline has been sent out from the throne and ignored. Now the desolation has begun. God has sealed a remnant. The judgment has begun with the ancient ones of the house. The glory has departed from the churches of America and from the churches of other lands where Americans have carried this false gospel. Just as in the past, the people of God are going to be desolated by God, and the process has already begun and has now begun to spread to the nations in which the people of God live. We have been warned to flee when we see. To see, you must discern. As the hour grows late, discipline has become a bit harsh sometimes. It has been very necessary. Desolation is very serious and terrible business, but there is more to come, even after the desolation. When I was young, I had one brother, one sister, who behaved like a brother. We were a rather rough bunch. This is the moderator talking about his past. My mother would spank us when we misbehaved, and we would cry crocodile tears. But when she left the room, we would laugh, because she just wouldn't spank us hard enough to really hurt us or scare us. But she used those dreaded words sometimes, quote, "I'm going to turn you over to your father," unquote. That elicited a change in behavior from us. But I am afraid that sometimes we do not turn fast enough or far enough to avoid falling into his wrath. Now, in my house, it was the same with our 10-year-old son, Johnny. He simply runs over to his mother like a bulldozer, but then she says those same words, and the same process begins all over again. She really believes that when she spanks him, it hurts, but when she is not in the room, he laughs. Ellipsis, to which I add, until she probably says the words, "I'm going to turn you over to your father." And then Johnny starts shaking in his boots because he knows that the moderator, well, when he spanks, it hurts. Well, gee whiz. You think? This forum is a place moderated by 5 men. 5 fathers, says the moderator. He was one of them. 2 of the 5 are soldiers. 1 is serving in Iraq right now. Now, this guy names names, and I have to edit. I'm not going to drop these names, because this is going out on a YouTube broadcast. Any old son of a gun can listen to this, and those men's identities would be compromised. So, 1 is serving in Iraq right now. Probably no longer, just so as you know, and emailed me yesterday to tell me he is okay. Another can educate you on firearms and ammunition if you choose to inquire. In a fight, I know who I want next to me. Just a feeling I get about this brother. Feelings I have learned to trust. These guys are not quote-unquote mamby-pamby guys, and I'll bet my remaining dollars, not much, that they have not read Dr. Spock's Guide to Parenting. If they read it, they quickly used it to cook beans. So if you want to receive touchy-feely discipline in the Alan Alda style, okay, I'm sorry, I'm stopping here. Alan Alda and MASH. You had to watch it. Alan Alda was one of 2 military doctors, and then there was, and she just died, the actress who was the lead nurse. And you had the colonel, and then you had the young guy who was the radar man, so they called him Radar. Anyway, this is a military medical unit. a MASH unit, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. That's what it's called. And the drama that happens in the MASH unit. Alan Alda was the cut-up doctor, one of two, that enjoyed his martinis from a hooch still. Yeah, and he was doing surgery. When you're out there in a MASH unit in the middle of a firefight, you do all sorts of things to deal with your inner pain, including having done so many surgeries, you can do them in your sleep. So you can do them even if you're crocked, so long as you can handle the instruments reasonably well and not leave anything in the wound. Most of your guys are either going to go back into the firefight and get themselves killed this time, or they're not surviving anyway. Harsh, but that's the reality of the war theater. And I've never served. How is it I sound so intimately acquainted with this? I'll never tell. A lady has to have some mystique, you know. So, to reiterate the moderator, so if you want to receive touchy-feely discipline in an Alan Alda style, this might not be the place for you. So Bob got the big stick out, and I affirmed what he was doing in the Holy Spirit. Why? Because desolation is not all there is that is coming, and Bob can see that. Since this is Bob Neumann's stuff, I'm leaving his name in that line. First of all, this will be the mother of all desolations. Some of the girls have related frightening visions. Yeah, I'm one of them. Back in the day, I had some doozies. They're starting to return. I'm 63. I am not the health I was back then. Basically, I'm getting too old for this. Okay, the moderator continues. Scripture says it will be the worst of times. A world of hurt is coming down on all of us fast. Bob is just trying to get a few of you to move by the Holy Spirit. Daniel 9 closes with that, quote-unquote, something else, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. That's the quote. What might the, quote-unquote, that determined thing be that, quote-unquote, shall be poured? For almost 1900 years, Jerusalem was desolate, but there was something else determined and was poured upon the desolate, and it still remains. Blindness. Israel is back in the land, but the Jews are still blind. For 1260 years, from 606 to 1866, the Roman Catholic Church held secular authority over the nation, and the popes regularly ordered executions and other killings and tortures. Yes, folks, they did. That has ended, but the blindness remains. Now don't you all get it? It's our turn. The desolation is not going to result from some rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. This desolation is camping at our doorstep. Some reach the place of discipline where the road forks and choose to return to the Lord. Some take the other fork. They dishonor, disrespect, God's anointed leaders because they have fallen into that habituality. And this is true in America like nowhere else. Habituality? Most people are very habit-oriented. They are easy to form and hard to break. Habits, that is. These folks disrespect the covetousness-laden false gospel preachers, and so they came out. Their coming out was good, but they brought with them rebellion and disrespect for leadership. You see, when you come out of something like that, you have to clean yourself off and examine yourself to see just how it has affected you. How have you been defiled by it? How was it that you were initially blinded to have been involved in it in the first place? Then many have disrespected those who rejected the prophets who prophesied of the coming desolation, and so they came out again. They were right in coming out, but not being careful. They still carried and nurtured rebellion and defiance. Now they refuse to bow to any God-ordained authority. They will not give any honor because they cannot see anyone to whom honor is due, full stop. If you're blind, how can you tell who's talking to you? I know a different kind of blindness, deafness. The blind that is also deaf. Who was that woman who was blind and deaf, but had a lady who took over in her life and helped her by using sign language in her hand so that the woman could feel the letters and eventually open her mouth to speak. The woman would also have this girl put her hand on her mouth. She was going blind herself. Some of us who've come out of this host included, do have a hellacious time with blindness and deafness and finding authority that is actually speaking from God and seeing it for what it is. If you give me the wrong rhetoric, I'm going to back away quick, fast, and in a hurry. Even if God is speaking through you, you're using a rhetoric that gives me a knee-jerk reaction. I don't want to hear the rhetoric. I want to hear this differently. But what if that's not how God is speaking through you? So then I start to have problems. I am learning that I'm going to have these problems. There's nothing I can do. But if the Lord tells me, don't lift a weapon, I do everything in my power not to. I could name names, and I won't. Anyway, moderator continues. They developed a habit of dissing. They became experts at exiting. They have not examined themselves to see why they were involved in the churches where prophecy was rejected. Where is the default or deficiency in me? How could I have seen it earlier? And yet now they are gathered together here on this forum. And some of them cannot discern just who a God-appointed leader is. So they diss and are even so heading toward desolation and blindness. Their previous, quote-unquote, comings out have not profited them. Are we, the 5 men of the forum, called, appointed, and anointed to lead a work that God has initiated? You will have to make that decision. We are convinced in the matter, and we will go about doing that work with a resoluteness and firmness, even a grimness at times. The joy of the Lord is our strength, but, quote-unquote, to everything there is a season. Dangerous times ahead indeed, a veritable minefield in the spirit, even if you are only riding in an REO Speedwagon. Oh gosh, REO Speedwagon was a group, a band. Moderator ends his, and Bob takes up a response from discernment to discipline to desolation regarding this. Dear brother, now I have read this post 3 times, and each time I have sat and wondered. You mentioned me and, quote-unquote, the big stick. In the past, I have had enough people say that's just because I commented on something. They were afraid to comment because I, quote-unquote, intimidated them. Says little about my people skills. Now, as I kept rereading your post, it reminded me of a story I read years ago. One night during a pouring rain, a man was traveling. As he was coming to a bridge, he slowed to cross, and as he started onto the bridge, he saw the tail lights of a car ahead of him suddenly vanish. He hit his brakes. The middle span had washed away. As he started forward, a car went around his and right off the bridge. The only thing he thought to do was to warn others that the bridge was out. So he turned on his hazard blinkers, went to his truck, took out several flares, lit them, set them on the road. And he went and stood on the road in the pouring rain, lit a flare in each hand, waving frantically at approaching cars. The first car honked at him, nearly ran him down as it sped by and into the river. Then another and another, and he felt panic when he could not get them to stop. He said that one of the cars was driven by a woman with kids in the car. In his account of that night, he felt that the sight of a man in the pouring rain waving flares so frightened the woman that she was in full acceleration when she went into the river. Eventually, a car stopped, and then others. Eventually, all traffic was stopped. State troopers told the man that he was a hero. He saved many lives. When they later dredged the river, they found 9 cars and trucks had fallen. When the news people went to find the hero, all they found was a man weeping because he believed he, quote-unquote, killed the woman and the children he saw drive by. Like I said, it was a story I read long ago, and I've never forgotten it. For a long time, I could not understand why the man blamed himself for anything. I could not understand how anyone driving would not stop when seeing flares and someone waving a warning. But I was young, and I did not understand a lot of things. The ability to second-guess oneself requires 2 things. First, you have to have tried to do something but failed. The second is a conscience that can be seared, a heart that can be broken. even when you do everything possible, the results may not be successful, and then you learn to live with it. Desolation is a great term. It gives me vivid images of events I do not want to happen, but my wants mean little in the long run. Likewise, when it comes to quote-unquote authority, I don't want it. Never have, never will. On the other hand, I understand quote-unquote being under authority and taking responsibility, being accountable for what I say and do. People do stupid things and make excuses. No one wants to be blamed for their own errors and mistakes, so we make excuses, deny any accountability. I remember the comedian Flip Wilson saying, quote-unquote, "The devil made me do it." And everyone laughed. Not my fault. Mistakes happen. You live and learn. You do better. That is what I was taught as a child. Bob, I'm back on this forum. I've been away a long time. This is my appraisal. As of right now, this appears to be pretty much a dead board. Bob may well have left us to go to be with Jesus. The guy the moderator would like to have in a fight is out there, probably realizes nobody is listening to him anyway, and is too old to run away. The guy who was serving as the moderator had a stroke. Seems as though the wifey is now running the board. Did it get anywhere? I don't know. As I do these series, I know they are basically an exercise in obedience. And at the end of the day, that might have always been the point. The moderators and men of the forum might have been being simply carrying on in obedience, because as it stands, I see nothing out there except for the moderator's prophecies and the wife's prophecies, but I don't see the stuff Bob put out anywhere. See, while I was part of this forum and Bob was busily putting out, I was given one obedience. I did the best I could, collected all. Found out that some other people collected stuff I didn't have, so now I have links to other places. I could pick up stuff that gets mentioned in the stuff I have and add it to my collection. As of right now, listening to something by a gentleman who was a part of the forum that I mentioned in the beginning of following the money to an Eastern power block, I look at this and I say to myself, isn't this interesting? Because if we get a Silk Road shift to the east, the far east, and they begin to coalesce their combined armies, you have something. In fact, a millennia after chapter 19 of Revelations, you may have something more. See, the men of the East can do one thing, and they can do it very well: rebuild. The men of the East are ancient men. They have a wealth of ancient knowledge. They're the type that pass it down from family to family. The people of the West are a little less connected. The people of the East are a lot more connected. It's how they think. Their religiosity is not Christian, but it is connection-oriented. And that allows them to coalesce. And your Gog Magog, well, that's after the dragon has been sitting in the pit for a millennium and gets loosed again for a season. I was going in one direction, then I was going in another. Now I'm not quite sure which way I'm going. So stay tuned, and that will end this series called Babylon, I think, and this episode of This and That. So until then,